guy with the good hair. He was Howard Dean's pollster when Howard Dean was chairman of the DNC. And he went through and basically said, here's why we lost. And it's interesting. I mean, there's a laundry list of reasons why we lost. The campaign never went to Wisconsin, the email server, on and on and on. But Cornell took a really close look at the 3 states that really swung this thing to, I can't even say the name President Trump. That just
45.
In Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, these are states that for decades have been Democratic states. But Cornell did an analysis of what went wrong by various demographics. And some really interesting things occurred there. The millennials, people under the age of 30% of those people in those 3 states voted for a third-party candidate. And, you know, that's amazing. And the other thing Cornell said, don't let anybody tell you that this was a landslide election. This was a cliffhanger election. And all but for a few thousand votes in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, we would be looking at a far different appointee to the Supreme Court than what we're now looking at, along with the laundry list of issues. It's almost to the point where each morning I can't decide which issue to be most pissed off about. And what do I do? Well, the new word is resist. But the interesting women in those 3 states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, also voted for Donald Trump. That makes absolutely no sense to me. But you would be surprised. Here I am in Denver at a Democratic National Committee executive meeting, and Cowlitz County, Washington came up. Cowlitz County, Washington came up along with my home county of Grays Harbor, Pacific County, and Mason County. These 4 counties in our blue state voted for Donald Trump. For the first time in decades, they voted for a Republican. So they really start taking a look at what went wrong in those counties and what went wrong in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. White, blue-collar voters who used to vote for the Democrats always had good jobs in mills and good union jobs with benefits, believed this baloney that Donald Trump was telling them. And that's who we lost. That's who we lost in those 4 counties and in those 3 states. You know, and it's just amazing the first 2 weeks. I personally have a new hero this weekend, and that's our Attorney General, Bob Ferguson.
Yes.
I got to sit and crack crab with him last year at the Pacific County Crab Feed. I thought he was a great guy, but he's really a hero now, and so is our governor.
Yeah.
And so is that judge.
So is Noah Purcell, who argued the case.
I read, yeah, he was on TV so the other thing that went on at the executive committee meeting is, and I'll talk about this a little bit more because we're in the middle of an election for a new chair. So I'm going to talk about that. But the other piece of business that the DNC will be taking up is the Reform Commission. I don't know if you remember the National Convention. It was a wonderful experience with a bad outcome, but there was a Reform Commission put together by the Hillary Clinton supporters and the Senator Sanders supporters. And this is not the first time we've had 100 Reform Commissions over the years. After each national convention, someone says, what's wrong? Why did we nominate these kind of candidates? Why didn't we get our people out? So we need to reform the system. So it's happened, I've been in 9 conventions. It happens after, so this is nothing new. Some people think this is new and the way to blow up the Democratic Party. That's not true at all. And we've had some really positive things come out of these reform commissions. One of the reasons we have a 100% gender split in our party is out of the Reform Commission. So you look at a Democratic National Convention or you look at even a slate of officers here in Cowlitz County, you have 50% female and 50% male, and that's the way it is from the bottom of our party to the top, and the way it should be. So the Reform Commission will actually meet after the election of the new chair. And Secretary Clinton has a number of appointments, and Senator Sanders has a number of appointments, and the new chair has a number of appointments. And they will issue a Reform Commission report. Two of the big things in there will be, one is what to do about the caucuses. And there is, I think, I have been for 40 years a caucus supporter. I went to my first caucus for George McGovern in 1972. But our state has gotten really too big to be a caucus state anymore. And there are all kinds of issues around the caucus. Accessibility, people can't get there because it's during work hours. ADA accessibility, all those kind of things, so that you have a really, and then you have the ability to manipulate the caucus, which has happened many times. You know, Dan Evans got thrown out of the Republican delegate selection process because he wasn't, you know, conservative enough in the Reagan years. And this year we had a terrible situation where we had one candidate who won the caucus and one candidate who won the primary. So it made our state look screwy. So I don't know if the National Party, my guess is that the caucuses are on life support, that they're not gonna be, and I think there's a groundswell in our own state to not have a presidential caucus anymore.
Thank you.
I don't know. It was a mess. The last one was really a mess. And I've been through a lot of messes. Susan, you've been through a lot of messes. Sure. I remember at Lincoln Elementary School in Vancouver when I was a Mondale supporter in '84, and 450 Gary Hart supporters showed up, and I had supplies for 50. So, you know, this is not the first time that the caucuses have been overwhelmed. And the beauty of the caucus has always been, that's where we get our best worker bees. People come to a caucus, they get hooked, they stick around. So.
They did this time with us.
Yeah.
Unless it gets specific.
Yeah, they've been, at each revolution, and there have been many, George McGovern, Jerry Brown, Jesse Jackson, Paul Simon, you name it. People get enthused, they come into the party, and they disappear. But all but for about 10%. But those 10% turn out to be really good work. Those are people you can depend on to go door to door, which incidentally, after all this high-tech, highfalutin stuff, it's door to door that still works. That's how we start to resist. Marching with millions of streets in pink hats, that's a good thing. Knocking on the doors during the election cycle and talking directly to voters, it's still the way we win elections. So we will be electing a new chair on February 25th in Atlanta. Our state actually has 9 votes. So we have 6 elected DNC members, and we have 2 at-large appointed DNC members, and most recently, Governor Inslee, because he's chair of the Democratic Governors Association, will also have a vote on the next chair. So how it all works is the only time we have an election is when we lose. Because if we had won, Hillary Clinton would have basically appointed the chair of the Democratic Party. That's the way it works. I've been through 3 elected chairs, Ron Brown, Terry McAuliffe, and Howard Dean. And I've been through about 13 appointed chairs. The chair of the party is not actually appointed, but it's a nomination from the president, and you get a ballot with one name on it. which sounds sort of like Cuba, but that's how basically it works. But I tell you, I'd rather be supporting Planned Parenthood and supporting the next nominee to the Supreme Court than voting for the next chair of the Democratic Party. It's, you know, but we have to start somewhere. We have to rebuild. We can't let this kind of stuff go on and on and on. I think there are, as of yesterday, 9 people running for chair. You all probably have followed this on the internet. There are a series of forums going on all over the country. We had one in Phoenix that I actually went to that one. We had one in Houston. We had one this past weekend in Detroit, and we're having one next weekend in Baltimore. So all of these candidates for chair are pushing their case. My mailbox is stuffed. My dinner bribes are coming in every day. But I want to let this process play out. I want to see who really presents the case to rebuild the party. All of them have committed to what used to be called the 50-state strategy. That was a key phrase for Howard Dean when Howard Dean was chair. That is pretty much universal. They all say that, yeah, that's a good thing. But what that really means out on the ground is that under Dean, 4 full-time organizers were assigned to each state and paid for by the DNC, but supervised by the state party. So they reported to the state chair, but they got paid for by the DNC. When Obama came in, that all went away. And as much as I love President Obama, he was not necessarily good for the party, because he created a parallel organization called Organizing for Action, Organizing for America, that sucked off a lot of the resources. So he had his, they were there to push his agenda. That was all fine and good. But the nurturing and building and organizing at the party, at the county, legislative district, and state level really did not do well under the Obama presidency. So we're in a recovery mode, because it's not so much what happens in Washington and at the DNC that matters. It's what happens in this room. How do you organize and take back that seat you lost in the 19th district? I'm embarrassed to admit that that guy that won is from my hometown of Aberdeen, and he's a Republican. We didn't used to have Republicans in Aberdeen. If I had my way, we wouldn't have them in Vancouver either, but unfortunately, we do have them. So some of the names that are running for chair, Congressman Ellison from Minnesota, who has promised me to my face that he will leave Congress if he's elected chair. And that wasn't just me. He got that message loud and clear. We, in our state particularly, we have a healthy political culture where there's a distance between elected officials and party officials. In many states, the governor runs the state party, or the United States senator runs the state party. That's not a good situation. Elected officials, although there are many wonderful ones and some ex-ones, first and foremost care about themselves. And secondly, care about the next election. That is their #1 priority always. So you do better when you have people in leadership who do not have a vested interest. So my deal about the new officers of the party is I'm not going to vote for any elected officials. It wasn't just Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Debbie Wasserman Schultz was appointed by President Obama, but she had to look out for her own congressional seat. So she was out raising money for herself. She should have been out raising money for the party. She did that, but then, she'd always do a separate ask for herself. So there's an inherent conflict. We have another candidate, Tom Perez. I don't know if any of you were at the state convention this year. He was the keynote speaker at the banquet. He just, 2 weeks ago, left as Secretary of Labor. He's terrific. He gave a terrific speech in Tacoma. So you got the Hispanic caucus endorsing him, and you've got the Congressional Black Caucus endorsing Keith Ellison. We have a current vice chair, Ray Buckley, who's also running. He's the chair of New Hampshire. We have a woman from Idaho, who's the executive director of the Idaho Party, is running. Jamie Harrison, who's the chair of South Carolina. He's on Rachel Maddow all the time. He told me when I met with him in Phoenix that Rachel Maddow was his TV girlfriend. And his wife was okay for that because Rachel Maddow was gay, so he can have a TV girlfriend. So I don't know, nobody's really emerged from this pack yet. There's a very interesting guy whose name is Mayor Pete. He's from South Bend, Indiana, where we haven't probably won, except for his seat in 50 years. It's the home of Notre Dame. So I imagine by the end of the forum, it'll sort itself out and it'll come down to 2 or 3 people. We actually have 9 national elected officers of the party. So we have 5 vice chairs. One of those is the vice chair for voter protection, which is a key thing. Because what's gotten us into this mess is the Republican control of redistricting and the Republican voter suppression that's going on all over this country. It's a terrible thing, and it's one of the reasons Hillary Clinton lost. And then we have the chair of the Association of Democratic Chairs, which is currently Ray Buckley. So there's 3 vice chair spots up for grabs, and there's about 12 people running for those, and there's one of everything. One of everything. I mean, you pick it. One of the things that came out of the forum that I thought was really interesting is it's almost nobody has the nerve to say this because it's so politically sensitive, is that in many ways the Democratic Party has become the party of minorities. And that's a good thing. That's our heritage, that's our history, that's who we stand up for. But we forgot about the white people down the way. We have nobody in leadership who is a straight white male on the entire Democratic National Committee. We have to fix that. We have to go after this is the reason we lose these counties in our state. We can't just be the party of minorities anymore. And then we have a national finance chair, that's up for grabs, and the treasurer is up for grabs, and the secretary is up for grabs. So it's interesting that the current secretary is the former mayor of Baltimore, Stephanie Rollins Blake. I don't know if she's the one that called the roll at the national convention. I think she's going to get beat. She was an Obama appointee. And I think the one person that might beat her is this young man from Wisconsin named Jason Ray. So it could be that the Democratic Party will have a male secretary. We've only had 3 secretaries in our history. So Dorothy Bush, some of you are old enough to remember when she used to call the roll, starting with Alabama, and then we had Kathy Vick, and then we had Alice Drummond. So we've only had 3 secretaries in our history. We have a rebuilding effort in front of us that is monumental, and that is what we need as our national chair. They do need to reinstitute the 50-state strategy. They do need to put more money into state and local parties. I didn't think that even under Dean, when each state got 4 staffers, that meant Idaho got 4 and California got 4. Well, Idaho has 4 electoral votes and California has 57 electoral votes. So I didn't think that was all cool, but the small states always act out. They get an inordinate amount of the time, they get their way. It's the small states that keeps the electoral college in place because they don't want to be run over by Texas and Florida and New York and California. So I don't know how that'll play out. I think all these candidates are really good candidates. So, we'll see. I don't think it's unhealthy for the party to have a bottom-up election and to pick our leader. But my deal is they have to put energy into rebuilding. I love acting out, I love protesting, I love resisting, but I like party building better. Because in the end, I've been at this for 50 years. Elected officials come and go, candidates come and go. The only thing that lives on is the institution of the party. Because, we all have our favorite candidates, we all have our favorite elected officials, but eventually they all move on, they go somewhere else. So what do you come back to? You have to come back to a strong party. And that's I probably rattled on too long, and I know if anybody has questions, I'd be happy to take a few if I didn't hit on something you wanted me to say.
In your time with the State Central Committee, have you ever had a resolution asking the DNC reps to vote for one particular person, which they tried to do?
Oh, they did. They tried to pull that last Saturday in Olympia. No, that was the first time. But I thought the young woman that spoke out against it, that primarily came from the Sanders people. The Sanders people are convinced that Keith Ellison is the best leader for the Democratic Party. So for those of you who weren't at the meeting, there was a resolution that would have mandated the DNC members to vote for Keith Ellison. Well, it was nonsense.
It was refused.
It's the same deal. They all complained about the elected officials, party and elected officials, who had a vote on the National Convention floor. They complained that they were committing early, and that's exactly what this resolution was asking us to do. So, the party and elected officials' role as delegates to the National Convention is also part of the Reform Commission. But there's an interesting history there. Because when McGovern won the nomination in 1972, there was a revolution, and they threw out all the elected officials. No more elected officials as delegates to the Democratic National Convention. It's going back to the people. Well, what happened in 1972? We won 2 states. Mm-hmm. So then in subsequent conventions, they said, we have to create a role for these elected officials. You can't have a delegation going to the National Convention that does not include your governor or does not include your senators. This makes no sense. So in the old days, those elected officials would take all the delegate spots to the nominating convention, and the worker bees would get nothing. So they created a situation where you make these people automatic delegates, and then all the worker bees are going to get, all the PCOs are going to be able to be national delegates. A lot of us in this room are national delegates elected that way. Mm-hmm. So it's a nice balance. And the other thing to know about these party and elected officials is they've never made a difference in the nomination. They've never, ever. Now, people will tell you that's nonsense. It's true. The winner of the popular vote has always been the nominee of the party. But some people have a claw in their, about this. Anyway, that will be part of the reform. I can tell you this much. Those reforms have to be voted on by the DNC, and I would doubt they vote themselves off the ship. That'd be my guess. Sure, you're back. You're an OSU guy.
Go Beavers.
Yeah, Peter and I went to the OSU WSU game.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Nice. I have a question for you. I'd like you to clarify something you said, because I want to make sure I understand. So one of the concerns that you have about elected officials being the chair of the party is that their primary responsibility is to get reelected in their own states or to their own office. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, right.
And my question was, isn't their primary responsibility to serve their constituents?
Well, as they're elected, that's why they should be an elected official and not a party official.
Right.
Right.
But I just heard re-election. I mean, I get that our representatives are re-elected every 2 years, but it struck me as this is also part of the problem is if they're worried about getting re-election as opposed to representing.
Yeah.
That's a frustrating part to a number of voters.
We've had a number of national party chairs who have been lay people. They weren't elected officials. And they devoted 100% of their time to building the party,
Sure.
where elected officials do have to attend to their, I had to go meet, as much as this is a horrible thing to do. I actually had to go to Jamie Herrera Butler's office this morning
Oh, poor David.
to talk about Medicare. So I met with some snotty little staffer who didn't really, I didn't get to meet with the big girl herself.
And I would like to say, I understand exactly what you're saying about, as an elected official, they have a job to do. And it's up to other people to handle their job, so I understand that. It's just what I'd heard was, running for re-election, and it just struck me that was, a bit much. I mean, a bit,
I think, to rephrase what he said, is that an elected official trying to run the party doesn't work because the elected official is concentrating on getting re-elected and not supporting the party. So they're out fundraising for themselves, they're not fundraising for the party.
or governing for the people.
Right.
And because I would just submit, Paul, that has to be the first order of business is represent. If Steve Moon's worried about getting reelected all the time and not actually performing on the city council, I've really got no use for Steve Moon. You know what I'm saying? Right, Steve?
Good. You're right.
That's reality, right? Unfortunately.
Sure, I think you had your hand up.
Has the party's support of labor and working class people declined?
Well, we did a couple reforms over the years. I don't know if you remember McCain-Feingold, where we banned soft money.
Managed by?
We banned soft money
Okay.
washing through the party. That's not the right term to use, but that's basically what it did. And I thought at the time that was the wrong thing. There's a hue and cry that all the lobbyists are all evil people and on the wrong side. But there are as many good lobbyists as there are bad lobbyists. So we can't take that money anymore. It's an act of purity, which I think is foolish, because there's one of the things that's happened is that the party has become somewhat irrelevant, primarily because of Citizens United, but also because the outside groups have now formed all these independent expenditures. So this money that used to come through the party and then get funneled out to party candidates doesn't happen anymore. Well, you know what? That money was regulated by public bodies that hold public meetings, that keep minutes. These independent expenditures don't even disclose their donors. And they do whatever they want, and nobody knows where this money is coming from. And there's more and more of that going on. And until we do something about Citizens United, and even at the congressional level, it's even worse. The DCCC, which is the Congressional Campaign Committee, completely controls the congressional elections in this country now. The party has little to say about that. And if you are not on their good list, if you're not on their priority list, forget it. If you've got a good candidate, first of all, the Democratic candidates on the DCCC protect themselves. Incumbent protection is number one. They don't necessarily want to go and try to pick up a congressional district somewhere. But that's the kind of thing we have to do. And I'm encouraged about the Eric Holder and Obama forming a redistricting commission. Because so many of these districts have been drawn that they're impossible for the Democrats to compete in. I think actually our state doesn't have a half-bad system. We have this 5-member redistricting commission. That works a lot better than in a lot of states, like Texas and Florida, where the Republican legislators draw these outrageous lines at both the state house and at the federal level, that it makes it impossible. Each congressional term, we win millions of more votes than the Republicans do. But they win because they have these gerrymandered districts. that are impossible, even in our own state. You know, we have 4 Republican seats and we have 6 Democratic seats. And, you know, somebody has to die for that to change, almost, because the incumbents have such an advantage. But I've seen some encouraging stuff coming out of the DCCC in the last couple of weeks, that they're gonna fight harder. They're gonna try to pick up seats. We let 2 congressional seats go uncontested in our state. When Doc Hastings left, we didn't even run a candidate in the 4th district. Well, the problem was we had this crazy top 2. So we ran 13 candidates, but only the Republicans survived in the Yakima district. Sure.
The thing about saving the ones they've got, this sounds an awful lot like football. You get ahead, you try and keep your lead, and you invariably lose, because then the other team starts attacking, and you forget how you got where you were, and you start losing.
Except for last night. That was the best football game I've ever watched. That's fair. I'm a football addict, so. Sure.
So you talked about how important party building is, and we know amongst ourselves who was a Bernie fan and who was a Hillary, but I feel like we've moved on.
Yeah.
But I look at other, like a nearby county, and I get on their web pages and I think, oh my God, they all hate each other down there. You're either on over here in the progressive group or you're over here. How do we party build if we're gonna keep separating ourselves?
Well, you're right, if you're referring to Clark County, it's a hotbed of it, but I think I've seen, you know, once people realize that their candidate lost and their revolution is over, they begin to see that the long-term people in the Democratic Party are